5 deportees transported from the United States to the Kingdom of Eswatini have become the subject of legal action in the country. The Eswatini Litigation Centre has launched an urgent application before the High Court over the decision by the Prime Minister to accept and detain the foreign nationals in the country. The organisation accuses the government of undertaking a process veiled in secrecy and wants a declaration of constitutional invalidity in relation to the conduct. Now, South Africa has already expressed concern over the potential risks that the convicts pose to the country's security. Newzroom Afrika's Zoleka Qodashe is following that story and joins us in studio to unpack this court application. Zoleka, good afternoon to you and thank you for joining us. So it's a little over a month now since those 5 detainees who landed in Eswatini, much to the disapproval of the people in Eswatini. In fact, Pudemo, who is the opposition party, said that they pose a very serious risk to an already vulnerable community in that area.
That's correct. You'll remember that after this exchange was undertaken last month, there has been uproar in the kingdom in particular, as well as the neighboring countries, the SADC region in particular. You mentioned South Africa raising its concerns, saying that these deportees were criminals that the United States had labeled as their own countries not wanting them. Now, that is the subject of a legal dispute before the High Court in the country, also saying with the applicants saying that they want a declaration of constitutional invalidity. They also want the court to direct the respondents, particularly the Prime Minister, about how he arrived at the decision and what measures were taken, what he took into consideration when making this decision. Of course, the Prime Minister appeared before Parliament, and of course that is the oversight body in terms of the executive, in terms of accounting to the oversight body on how those decisions were taken. So that is what the applicants require from the High Court, a declaration of constitutional invalidity, given the high volumes of prisoners that are said to be in Eswatini's prisons, particularly the correctional facility that the 5 deportees from various countries are being held in.
And I know the Prime Minister had mentioned that these are the friends of the king initially when they had come into the country, but they'd also said that they wouldn't be keeping them for a very long time. What are the plans with regards to these detainees?
Well, what we know is that there was an indication that they would only be in Eswatini's correctional facility for about 12 months until they would be repatriated to their home countries. But the question that's being asked is, it begs the question what the purpose of the entire exchange is if they are to be repatriated to their own home countries, if their home countries had given an indication that they do not want them. Of course, the organization also says that they had reached out to these countries and there was no indication that there was any communication from the United States that they did not want these convicts. And so the organization also wants the court to also interdict the Prime Minister from receiving any other deportees, because there was an indication that they were open to receiving more. And so they want an interdict pending the finalization of the Part B application, which would be the main application where all the merits are fully fleshed out. You'll remember that this is an urgent application, so they are asking the court to hear this matter as a matter of urgency in resolving the current dispute that they have at the moment.
And of course, I mean, this then brings the question as to how much Eswatini is receiving for taking in these deportees.
Well, that is one of the questions that is being posed to the Prime Minister. And in the declaration of constitutional invalidity, they asked the court to also give an order directing the Prime Minister to give that indication of whether there was a financial transaction to begin with, and to what extent that financial transaction is. And so that's what they're asking from the court. But they're also saying that this flies in the face of their constitution in terms of an international agreement. So they say that this is an international agreement, and as such, whenever there is an international agreement, it must go to Parliament for it to be ratified. That process did not unfold. So they say that it flies in the face of the Constitution because they were unable, or they did not do that in terms of the prescripts of their Constitution. But another question that is being asked is how effective will this court action be if the word of the king is ultimate in the kingdom? Will it render the legal action moot? And if so, will they be proceeding with the legal action? Of course, we spoke to a representative from the organization who says even if that is the case on the ground, the Constitution also gives the king his powers, and so everything must be in line with the Constitution. So we await to see how that will unfold when the High Court hears the matter.
And of course, you've mentioned that South Africa has expressed its concern, particularly with regards to the potential risks of the convicts that they would pose, not only on Eswatini, but on South Africa as well. The presidency, what's their stance at this point in time?
Well, we heard yesterday from the presidential spokesperson, Vincent Magwenya, saying there were engagements between South Africa as well as the Kingdom of Eswatini in relation to this matter, and says that there was an indication or an undertaking from the Kingdom that they would not allow the convicts to escape. But let's just take a listen to what Vincent Magwenya had to say during that briefing yesterday.
There have been engagements between Eswatini as well as South Africa, and there have been some assurances that have been given by Eswatini. I will stop there and say those engagements will continue. South Africa's concerns about that whole exercise are well documented and are well known, and Eswatini has so far undertaken to ensure that none of those individuals escape their care and find themselves in South Africa.
Well, Zoleka, we also know that the U.S. has imposed tariffs to many countries across the globe. At some point, they had said that the minimum would be 15%. We know that South Africa is currently sitting at 30%, but Eswatini is sitting at 10%. Could there be any correlation between the deportees and their tariffs only sitting at 10%?
Well, at the moment, there isn't an indication of that. But there has been speculation that this may be one of the reasons why Eswatini, the Kingdom of Eswatini, has undertaken to house these deportees who the nationals in the country have raised serious concern with. Now, you mentioned that they have been slapped with a 10% tariff. So there is an indication on the ground that maybe this was done in order to stop the U.S. or mitigate it from increasing those tariffs, as we've seen with India being slapped with a further 25% on top of what they were already imposed with. So that is kind of the realm of speculation that citizens are indulging in because of that failure of the Prime Minister to disclose the reasons behind the action that was taken.
Well, surely this process is shrouded with secrecy. We hope that the Eswatini Litigation Centre is going to be able to get a lot of the answers that they're looking for. Zoleka, Qodashe, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.